Myrna Bittner, and I am the CEO and co-founder of RunWithIt Synthetics. I spent part of my childhood in living in Nairobi, Kenya, and went to school and public school in Africa, moved back and finished high school here in just outside of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And then I went on to do a bachelor's degree in sociology and English literature, and went right from that into a master of business administration. And that's where I started my first technology company. In the 1990s was when I was first involved in a company that I founded to look at very complex construction projects around submarines. And there was a lot of documents that and plans and construction documents and material supplies. And all of these documents needed to be kind of understood together and accessible by everybody who was working on these submarines. And I'm not a submarine expert. So, but there was a emerging field of artificial intelligence that enabled people to look at the language that was used in these construction documents and help people approach it. So if I wanted to say, I want to know everything about this type of handle that's used on this hatch in this submarine, that I could be able to use real words, common words to describe that. And I could access all of the documents that had to do with that particular hatch. This led to building a capability where we could use what are called neural nets and artificial intelligence to be able to understand very complex concepts and from very different sources of information. That evolved into being able to use that ability to build realities around other systems. So these could be systems where you have wireless light switch systems in your home, or systems where you have in-vehicle device-based system on your dash that's feeding you information. And we could build realities around those systems, so those systems could think they were operating in a truck or in your home or in a satellite or in your TV set. And we could expose them to all of the things that those systems might encounter and see how they would react and respond. That then led to the ask by some of our customers to say, well, can you create a synthetic reality of a city? And that was where we kind of began to look more and more like SimCity, except for real, was where we began to design cities as these living, full of living beings and entities and buildings and cars and trees and climate conditions. And we could build those digital realities, and then have people explore and dial forward time and dial forward different scenarios. Do we want the weather to be cold or hot? Or do we want autonomous vehicles? So self-driving buses that pick people up? Or do we want to make changes in utility infrastructure? So how we deliver power to electric vehicles? And the list of questions just continues to grow. And that's kind of how RunWithIt was formed, was over the course of evolutions of technology and what was being asked of it. And now we get to live in the world of modeled cities. When we started the company almost 10 years ago, we decided that we wanted to be the experts in creating these synthetic realities, and that we knew already that we were going to be asked to do very different things with these synthetic realities. And we didn't want to become the experts in what our customers were experts in. We wanted to be able to help them see their worlds, and then we wanted them to run with it. So we wanted to give our customers capes, and have as many wonderful, diverse customers as possible, but really be the experts at creating synthetic realities for whoever thought that they were of value. My average work day. So I usually get up really quite early, and that's my kind of quiet time when I do a lot of reading. So usually it's to catch up with things that of interest. So I have several topics of interest that I follow. I'm an avid news junkie, so I'm listening to the news and trying to learn more about the world in which we exist, and different things that are of concern, as well as different things that are, great news and of opportunity. Because our work is so international, I also consume a lot of international news first thing in the morning, because I think that just brings perspective sometimes into worlds that have a very local focus, but there are some solutions that are out there internationally that you can bring with you into that world. I have chickens, and I have a stray cat, and I used to have a lot more animals, but my horses are at the stable now because I travel a lot. But so it's feeding the chickens and the birds, and if I'm at home, and looking after the cat. And then usually I'm online. So I do a lot of my work remote and from at home, and have a structured day of meetings and presentations. I do a lot of presentations around the world. And then in the evenings, again, I like to walk or run or cycle, and then usually I do a little bit more work to finish up my day before I go to sleep. When you can create a city, and you can create the people that are in the city, so it's a process whereby we take all different kinds of publicly available data, so the data that people supply when they fill out their census form and information. Maybe it's public permits, that are issued. It's Google Earth images, so you can see, the structure of a city, and you can combine that with health data or with survey data that people have expressed a preference for things, or they have cataloged events, in their lives. You can build a never identified but accurate living city. That then is used by our customers when they are participating in this city, because our customers are very interested, whatever city they're from, in being successful today for what they're building or supplying, how they're encountering or how they are going to be successful in the future too in that city. So if they're building things in the environment, or new buildings or residences or subdivisions, they want those to be successful for the people that are going to live there, not just like tomorrow as soon as they sell them, but for decades in the future. That's some of the ways that people use our environments, is they come to us with a particular thing that they want to implement in a city, or that they want to understand. So what if we planted more trees in boulevards? Or what if we changed the transportation route over here? Or what if we built more houses over here that students could afford? How would that change our city? And can we see and watch and ask all the questions that we need to ask to make sure that what we are wanting to build or supply to that city is going to be successful? Today, people are looking at it in terms of energy transition. There's a lot of questions we have about energy transition. So how to make sure that we move from molecule-based fuels to more sustainable fuels, and what does that mean if we invest in those technologies to the health of people who live around transportation corridors and may be affected by emissions more profoundly than others? How do we ensure that people can move and have access to education opportunities or job opportunities or healthcare? How do we make sure that we're building the right infrastructure, that as transportation changes, because it has changed so dramatically in the last even 50 years, that it will be ready, that those investments will make sense 50 years from now, when transportation may have changed even more. So we get asked a lot of those kinds of questions. More and more now we get asked about questions that have to do with climate events. So we know the climate is changing, And we know that that introduces some really profound storm systems or heat events or things that stress the infrastructure and the buildings and our lives and livelihoods the way they are today. And they want to understand what those stresses may be, and they want to trial things in the new climate, and to see and make sure that we are making the right decisions that leave no one behind, that we're building cities that are successful for everybody. That was really a unique project. So we had a city up and going as a synthetic city. And it was Edmonton and the 14 municipal districts that include Edmonton. And we had an ask. There was a program that helps vulnerable youth and their families with some really unique needs. And there's 5 different streams in that program. There's nutrition and mentoring, mental health, after-school programming, and family support. And they offer these with the explicit goal to give vulnerable students and their families the most they can to help them with wraparound services and graduate, be successful graduates of high school. And they think that these programs are just a critical piece of helping people reach that, and young people reach that graduation point, which changes their life trajectory. So when you graduate from high school, there's all different kinds of opportunities already just with that high school graduation in hand, that can lead to post-secondary or trades or skilling. But just having that graduation certificate and diploma is so important. These programs, they wanted to help people understand the impact of these programs on the lives and livelihoods of these students and their life outcomes, but also in the community. So the people that are supporting them, the people that they are employed by, the relationships they have in the community with others, and going forward, how generationally this can also make a difference in the community. So in this Edmonton region. So we looked at, and we were able to take the synthetic population that we had, and we were able to look at a very modest increase in investment in these programs so that more students and their families could have access to these programs, and look at what if we were to impact the graduation rate by just 5%. So a very modest increase in the graduation rate, what this would mean to the community and the lives and livelihoods of these people in the program. And we were able to look at all the way through to their impact in the community in general. I think we found that with just a very modest increase in the graduation increase, that there was about, I think, 7.7% of people with high school graduations, achieve a massive amount more revenue for the community. So GDP, as they call it, or gross domestic product, of almost 819 million over the course of their lifespan in the community. And that their incarceration rates, so areas where they become, heavily impacted by the judicial system or the healthcare system, so they were far healthier going forward as well. And that we could tie that, right back to how those people participated in those programs and the access they were given. They had healthier lives and households, and we could track them as they were going and growing through their lives and livelihoods. Their children were most likely to also then succeed in school. So they were creating a generational impact, and then their children were also, that next generation of children were more successful. There was a significant part, probably about 20% of the kids who went through these programs and became adults, who needed some community supports afterwards. So this wasn't we can't solve everything, but the amount of community support that they would need throughout their lifetime was just dramatically changed. There was so many more success stories. So that was a little bit about some of the results that we were able to see. But it was very powerful because we could actually, these weren't just graphs or charts or numbers. We could actually watch these people, these students and their families as they interacted with the program, and then watch the results as they moved through their lives and livelihoods in the synthetic environment, and celebrate. So it was a very forward-looking impact on the community. That was our first environment that we did, was in an earthquake zone, and they were wanting to make sure that the systems that they were putting in place that would shut off the gas very quickly and shut off the power very quickly and detect issues to do with whether or not there were power lines down, or there was fire or particulate matter that indicated smoke. And use all of these kind of smart devices as a part of building buildings, how that would actually impact the buildings themselves. So would it help the buildings have less fires and explosions and prevent damage? And then most importantly, how could all of those same or similar devices help the people who were maybe evacuating from those buildings, and in communication, so they could figure out where they should go, who they should help or turn to help, and they would let the first responders know even where there was people who needed help. So it was a lot of interest around how we could take technology and implement it into houses and buildings and offices, and improve the outcomes for people who we know live in earthquake zones. And the timing was really relevant. We have been a part of a lot of clean tech panels and research studies, and the trades are ever expanding. So the building is never stopping. In fact, if anything, the building in our infrastructure and in our communities and in our households and residences that people require is something that is just an expanding field, and there's a huge demand. In California, there's some really unique barriers that they face because there is a profound target to shift to solar and wind and all different forms of electrified energy. And key component of that, of course, is having tradespeople. And they need so many, and there just aren't enough. And so they're finding now that there are really significant projects that are where all of the supplies have been purchased and the funding has been released and the permits and approval are in place, but they cannot and they do not have the labor to actually, decarbonize our grid and just do the tasks of project design and installment and maintenance. And that's really, I think, one of the profound barriers that, through some of these assignments where we do modeling and you begin to understand the simple math of it takes a certain number of hours and a certain number of skilled people to be able to accomplish these, and where do they come from? And the world has this profound demand. I mean, because it's not just California that is looking for these types of people. It's all over North America and all over the world. So these skills are truly highly sought after, and there is going to be a profound shortage, I think. And so it's a great profession to get into. Also, in some interesting facts in that there has been a significant underrepresentation of women in these fields, and yet that is one of the things that they are looking to solve, because in many places the apprenticeship programs and the internship programs, you have a living paid wage while you are learning and being certified. And this is a really good opportunity to change that and shift that and welcome more gender inclusivity into those trades and fields and solve some of those really fundamental shortages. I have grown up in with farming family, with teachers, with entrepreneurs in our family. So people from all different aspects of industry. Nobody before me in technology, but I saw technology as a real way of solving many problems, primarily around communication. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think as a child, I was always an observer. So I always felt like I was watching to see how things worked, how social groups worked and people, as well as how jobs and professions worked and teachers worked. And so I've always felt like I was kind of an observer and a generalist. I liked many things. I liked all things. And so I was unsure of what my career would be, because I didn't want to be a fire person. I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't have a profession that I saw myself as being particularly skilled at. I just liked many things. I think that there is a lack of understanding about what we do. Misconceptions. Maybe people try to find things that are close to what they understand, and they're wondering if we're that, so that we can be a little bit more comprehensible. But it has made it very easy to have the Sim City reference, because many people nowadays have grown up understanding how and have engaged or watched others engage and play Sim City, how you can look at and manipulate and design a world that includes people, and watch what happens. And that's really made it easier to explain what we're up to and what we're doing. The keys to success for us are humility, intense curiosity, and a passion for being able to give people agency in facing and designing and participating in some very complex futures. So we have the humility part comes into when we walk in or are called into rooms where there are profound and deep experts. They have expertise in their field, in their practice, in their profession, and we are being called in to be able to be the consumers of that expertise, and then turn that into understandable futures for others to participate in. So that we have to be very humble. The curiosity, we have to learn about everything that is out there. So whether that's what's happening in the climate, or what's happening with new modes of mobility and e-scooters and in e-bikes, to what's happening in how we build buildings and how we cool them or heat them. All of those things kind of wrapped up together, and how that affects our lives as people, and may affect the lives of people in the future. So there are so many elements that we have to be consumers of and interested in and tracking at the same time. It kind of suits my generalist skill set and interests. And then being very cognizant of how people can interpret or see that information. So we have needed to really pay attention to how we deliver things, so that people of all coming from all different places and walks of life can look at and understand some very sophisticated concepts and futures. Programs like Honor the Work, where you are actually giving people a chance to learn and touch and experience and understand the important role that these trades are going to play in more sustainable and affordable and equitable worlds that we're all hoping to be a part of building. I think are some of the most important things that we can do. Seeing is believing, and touching, experiencing, being a part of understanding even what these careers offer, and the role that they play, and the shortage, I think, that the need for those roles to be filled can be very compelling. So education, 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 and experience, I think, are really important. I think it can start early. I mean, I remember playing with the small construction kits when I was young. My parents built our home, and so I got to experience kind of what that was like, watching that, that the physical environment, and building, and craftsmanship, and trades. And I think exposure to those types of things from as young as you can get normalizes them, and you recognize and realize what they are, and the skills that are needed, and the value that those positions offer as well. Value to the community, and value, to your own life and lifestyle as well, because they are so if you can see it, and understand what they are and what they mean and what a work day looks like, I think you can likely see yourself in those positions as well. I think that we shouldn't bring our own misconceptions into fields that may be of interest to our kids. I know that there has been so much work, and there is so much ongoing work in terms of skilled trades and training and safety. I also know that there is just so much reward from doing physical work. So I've had several moments in my career, in my life, where my work has been extremely physical, and I've always enjoyed that. And I think that we need to promote things that may be of interest to our kids and future generations, that they can gain their understanding from the experts, rather than as a parent, bringing our own misconceptions into about a career or a lifestyle that we may not be the experts in. I think the being able to look at and provide opportunities for change in a skilled workforce with a trade and a profession, and introducing that at an age level that there isn't a lot of gender distinction. In the elementary classes, there are people who are looking for, and kids who are looking for and yearning for that exposure to all different types of activities and career and prospects, and I think being able to bring that to them, and actually having physical, hands-on, professionally guided, and with training and understanding and information about what this can mean, and what some of the next steps are, and what those lives look like, are just invaluable, because there are so many opportunities. And I think waiting until later on, until high school or later, it's really challenging for people to be able to pick up and learn and understand. For the first time at that point, it may be too late for them to make those decisions about what it takes to become engaged in the trades, or how you build that life path, and that success, and that understanding of that you can even attain that success, starting at an early age, not after you've completed high school.